Apple may have just accidentally leaked some big news about the future of the Apple Watch, and it directly affects the next Apple Watch SE. According to code unearthed from Apple's own internal files, the upcoming Apple Watch Series 11, Apple Watch Ultra 3 and yes, the Apple Watch SE 3 will be running on the brand new S11 chipset. But before you get too excited, here's the twist. While the S11 is technically a new generation chipset, it won't actually bring any massive processor performance boost. In fact, it's built on the same underlying T8310 architecture that powered the S9 and the S10. Now, this isn't something Apple does by mistake. In fact, it's a strategy we've seen before. The S6, the S7 and the S8 were all fundamentally the same under the hood as well, and with the S9 and the S10 already being based on the A16's dual-core sawtooth CPU design, Apple seems content to stretch the silicon across multiple watch generations. That's not necessarily a bad thing. After all, we're talking about a 64-bit dual-core processor paired with a 4-core neural engine, 64 gigs of onboard storage, and second-generation ultra-wideband support. For a wristwatch, that's still a lot of power. You're not gaming on this or editing 4K video, you're tracking workouts, responding to messages, running Siri, and using small applications. But here's where things get interesting. Just because the architecture hasn't changed doesn't mean Apple won't refine it. With the S10, Apple made the chipset thinner so that they can make the Series 10 thinner, and so with the S10 we might not see a performance leap, but we could see efficiency gains, thermal tweaks, or even extra room for a slightly larger battery, though I know the Apple Watch getting battery upgrades is pretty unlikely. If anything, it feels like Apple's holding the big guns for 2026's S12, which is expected to finally bring a brand new microarchitecture. For now though, the S11's more of a S10.5, stable, proven, and optimized. So what does that mean for the Apple Watch SE 3? Well, it's nearly been 3 years since the last SE refresh, and rumours are all pointing towards the SE 3 arriving this September. And if you're familiar with Apple's playbook, you'll know the SE 3 is all about balance, giving you most of the Apple Watch experience at a much lower price. Let's start with design. There were reports last year that Apple's experimenting with a bold new idea for the SE 3, a hard plastic casing, almost like a spiritual successor to the iPhone 5C. Imagine a brightly coloured Apple Watch in red, blue, yellow, maybe even green, aimed squarely at younger buyers, but from what's been reported, Apple's design team wasn't too thrilled. This look apparently leaned too much into toy territory, and when Apple ran the numbers, producing an entirely new plastic chassis won't even be cheaper than aluminium. Because aluminium designs are already established, with existing tooling and production lines, Apple can recycle them with minimal extra cost. Plastic would have required a whole new manufacturing process, and that's just not Apple's style when it comes to their budget products. Reusing old designs have always been the more efficient route, and that's exactly what I think they'll do again. The original SE and SE2 reused the Series 4 design, the SE3 then will likely borrow from the Series 7. That means slimmer bezels and larger displays, moving from the current 40 and 44mm size to 41 and 45mm, just like the Series 7, 8 and 9. The subtle change will give the SE3 a fresh, more modern feel, while still keeping it clearly below the flagship Series 10 and upcoming Series 11, which are expected to push case sizes to 42 and 46mm. Apple always wants to leave something extra for those premium tiers. On the back, don't expect a return to glass. Apple's going to stick with the nylon composite back they introduced with the SE2. It's durable, scratch resistant, and cheaper to produce than glass, while still supporting charging and sensors. For an SE, it just makes sense. The display is where Apple may quietly give the SE3 a meaningful upgrade. The SE2 tops out at 1000 nits of brightness, which is still perfectly fine outdoors, but when the Series 9 jumped to 2000 nits, the gap between them widened. My bet is that Apple's going to allow the SE3 to inherit that 2000 nit display, while reserving the rumored 3000 nit display for the Series 11 and Ultra 3. That way every tier steps up brightness wise. And while the SE3 won't match the viewing angles of the Series 10 and 11's improved panels, it's still going to feel like a massive leap forward for SE users. Speaking of leaps forward, here's one for you. Hit that subscribe button. It's free and it means you'll always be in the loop with the latest Apple news and deep dives just like this one. Join the Surround By gang now and never miss an update. We're trying to hit 20,000 subscribers, so every sub would be appreciated. Now let's talk about what the SE3 won't get, and the biggest omission once again will be the always on display. I get it, this is a single feature that makes the SE feel incomplete. Being able to just glance at your wrist anytime, anywhere, without raising it is a game changer, and Apple knows this, which is exactly why it keeps that feature locked to the premium watches. Always on requires LTPO panels to scale refresh rates all the way down, even to 1Hz, and Apple simply does not give that tech to its cheapest models. It's an easy upsell. Want always on? You need to spend at least $399. Performance though is where the SE3 should feel noticeably better. With the S11, you're essentially getting the same raw power as the Series 11, and while that doesn't mean huge speed jumps over the SE2's S8, it does mean smoother Siri interactions, fast app launching, more responsive dictation, and crucially, longer software support. If you're buying an SE3 this year, you can realistically expect Apple to support it with updates well into the 2030s. That's a massive selling point. Plus, features that the SE2 missed out on will almost certainly arrive now. Double tap, Apple's clever gesture control where you can pinch your fingers together to control the watch, debuted with the S9. With the newer engine in the S11, it's almost guaranteed to trickle down to the SE3. Same with ultra-wideband support, the SE2 didn't have it, but the SE3 likely does. And that means you'll finally be able to use precision finding with your iPhone or AirPods and enjoy seamless integration with the HomePod. These are small things, but they do add up, making the SE feel more like the full Apple Watch experience rather than a cut down version. What about health features? This is where Apple continues to draw the sharpest line. The SE3 won't get ECG, it won't get blood oxygen detection, it won't get temperature sensing, and it certainly won't get whatever new health feature Apple's lined up for the Series 11. Why? Because Apple wants its higher-end watches to feel life-saving. Quite literally. It's a powerful upsell. The SE is going to remain more about health tracking, notifications, and casual health features. That said, one area Apple could surprise us with is sleep apnea detection. This is a software-driven feature, not reliant on new sensors, so there's a chance it comes to the SE3 as well. That would at least broaden its usefulness beyond just step counting and heart rate tracking. Storage could also see a nice upgrade. With the S11 supporting 64 gigs, the SE should double its current 32 gig capacity. That's plenty of space for apps, offline music, and podcasts. A new third generation optical heart sensor may also appear, improving accuracy for workouts and health tracking, and IP6X dust resistant feels like an easy win for Apple to add, given it's already standard on higher end models. Battery life though remains the elephant in the room. We've had all day 18-hour endurance since 2015, and it doesn't seem like the SE3 is going to break that cycle. Apple's focus remains on keeping things light, slim, and stylish, even if it means charging every night. Personally, I think it's overdue for Apple to focus on multi-day endurance without requiring low power modes, but realistically, the SE3 won't change that story. So what about price? This is where things get really interesting. The current SE2 starts at $249, and I think Apple will hold the line there. Could it drop to $199 to really capture budget-conscious buyers? Sure, and with Apple sales declining slightly over the past few years, it would make sense, but Apple rarely plays the aggressive pricing game. More likely they'll keep it at $249 and position it as the perfect entry-level point into the Apple Watch ecosystem. And remember, timing is everything. The SE3 will almost certainly launch alongside the iPhone 17 this September. Just like previous SEs did with iPhone events, Apple loves bundling its big announcements, and this year will be no different. So to recap, Apple Watch SE is likely going to get a refreshed Series 7 design, a brighter display, a new S11 chipset with double tap and ultra wideband, improved durability, more storage, and maybe even sleep apnea detection. But it's also going to miss out on the always-on display, advanced health sensors, and of course multi-day battery life. The question is though, is that enough to tempt buyers in 2025? At $249, it still represents strong value, especially if you want a solid Apple Watch without breaking the bank. But would a lower $199 price point make this a runaway hit? Honestly, I think so. Anyway, I'd love to hear your thoughts. Will you be picking up the SE3, or are you holding out for the Series 11 or Ultra 3? Let me know in the comments. Don't forget to like the video, and if you haven't already, hit subscribe to stay up to date with all the latest Apple leaks and reviews. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.